module covers engineering economics. So that is now on the second page. You will have about 6 to 9 questions on engineering econ, and they'll cover these different topics. So the time value of money. So this is the main thing where you use the formulas as far as like present value, actual value, future value, that kind of stuff. Cost analysis, so benefits versus cost. Economic analysis, so sort of similar. So the cost analysis is just really how much does it cost you, and then economic is like the benefit, how much do you make versus how much does it cost you. So more of like the revenue versus cost and finding the profit. Maybe some stuff about uncertainty, and then the project selection would be comparing like what is going to be a more profitable or more economical thing for your company to invest in, like automated versus manual, or like one type of equipment versus another type of equipment by doing some calculations. So let's take a look at the handbook section. So engineering economics is down here. It is probably the bottom section of stuff that you would want to know. So the rest of the handbook, you won't do a whole lot in those other sections. But this first page is the majority of stuff that you would want to know. So you basically just have to know, be able to identify which type of formula do you want to need. So, is it the F over P, the P over F, all of that kind of stuff? You can literally just find the formula, the variables being in, which is the number of years or months or whatever time frame, time units the problem uses. I would be the interest rate in terms of percent, and then these other numbers. So we would have P for present worth, A for annual worth, F would be for future, and then G is for a gradient. So, and they kind of list things out here as well. But you can do everything using these formulas, but you can also, skip through this page, do them using tables. So they have, if you know which one you need, the P over F, the P over A, etc., you can just use this table for whatever is the appropriate interest rate, and then however many years or months or whatever, and just find it in the table. So you go down the column for N, and then you'd go over to whatever fraction formula you need, and then that is the value. So they have it for I equals 50% interest, 1% interest, 1.5, 2, and then it starts going up, more jumping, 4, 6, 8, 10. So the other thing you can do is just interpolate between two. So for example, if you had a 9% interest rate, then you would find the value for 8, you would find the value for 10, and you would average those. So that would be using a linear interpolation. But here using the formula, if you want to use the formula, that also works. Now the other stuff in here, so these are just different types of like terms that you should know. And a straight line depreciation is something that they might ask you about, and that is the typical type of depreciation. Like no one will say, oh, consider a parabolic depreciation. No, it's always going to be a straight line. So here you would have the straight line depreciation. The slope is basically like how many, what the N is for the time period, so number of periods as far as like, if it's 12 months or 10 years or whatever it is. C is the cost, and then S is, I think, the salvage value. So what is it worth after that time period? So example of using this, the D is the depreciation slope. So let's say that you bought a piece of equipment for $10,000, and then 5 years later, it's only worth $2,000. Then your depreciation, to find your linear depreciation rate, you would have the initial cost, which was $10,000. You'd have the salvage value, which is sort of its leftover value, and that's the $2,000. And then N would be the how many years you had it, which was 8. So you would put it into that formula. Okay, so these are just some different types of costs, rate of return, So that's the interest rate that you would be willing to accept on the investments. Is it a good rate of return or is it not? So the rate of return would basically make the benefits and the costs equal to you. Then a benefit cost analysis is where you would see like, okay, is the benefit greater than the cost? Yeah, obviously if it's not, don't do it. And then these are just some additional formulas. So let's look now at the module. So this is a shorter module. You can also probably do this one in a couple days. So take a practice quiz. If you find that you're totally lost, go and watch this review video, do some of these practice problems, or doing some of your practice problems. If you had a class on engineering econ, study that stuff. And then take your real quiz and do any corrections for the Dropbox. When you finish that, it will unlock the next module, which is statics.